I'd rather draw a good to great unit twice as often than try and hold out for, the top 2 or 3 tags for that species and weapon of choice.
Yeah.
It was a great time. We spent Thanksgiving in a camper. #Welfare Thanksgiving. It was great.
We get a little bit of self-service in some areas, and I sent a picture to my wife of us, and we were glassing on the hillside. And she responds, "I didn't know you were leaving. Where have you been all weekend?" To Nate's point, it's very weather dependent, so we are hunting, mule deer that are migrating hundreds of miles to be here.
Like considerably more amenities in this style.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We spent a good amount of time, on the hoof, glassing and whatnot too. But we weren't in the backcountry by any means on this trip.
So we saw, I'm going to throw this number out, and some people are going to be like, "What? You're disappointed with that?" I do appreciate it every time we can cut 300 yards in, a matter of a minute or two.
Well, and you can see 300 yards too.
Yeah. If you're looking at a group of 6 does and it's mid-November, logic tells you there should be a buck there, so you can get spotting scope out, dial it in, and pick apart each, blade of grass. And he was a good buck, really good buck. So once he got back on top, I just booked it. I got out, I ran, and realized I was wearing too many clothes, and I was sweating profusely. We took the binos down for a second, readjusted, and then he was gone. That was the other thing I was thinking today, and the mental wrestling match that you go through when you're hunting. Here we are. Another episode of The Crave. It's been a while. It's been a while since we threw the headsets on.
Yeah, we've been hunting. We're still hunting.
Yes.
We just brought them with us this time.
Yep.
The mics, I mean.
So if you can't tell, we left the talent at home. John's not with us. We're on location. So we are actually on mule deer hunt right now. So day 2, got here late. We got here early Saturday morning.
Yes, I was going to say, it was more like early on day 1 as opposed to late the day before season.
Did not get to shove off too early. Had to do daddy duties and watch the kids. So we got to
earn the bill paying money as well.
Yeah. So we pulled out of the driveway about 7. Well, it was a little before 7, and we pulled in here at 2-ish, 1:30, 2.
Yeah.
I think it was about 1:30 when we turned off the highway, so about 2 o'clock by the time we parked. Yeah.
Probably close to 3 by the time we got all situated and crawled in the fart sack.
And then immediately realized that I was underdressed for the temperature.
Yeah, you did realize that pretty well in short order.
Yeah.
On night 1. Yep.
Night 1 was a short one. Maybe a good hour's sleep, maybe. So we are on a limited draw hunt, mule deer hunt in eastern Oregon. This is one of a handful of tags, somewhere between 15 and 35. I can't remember exactly what, but are available. It's an archery hunt. And I put in for, I think it was 7 years before I drew this tag. So
you had 7 points plus the year of application.
No,
or 6 plus.
It was my
7th
7th year. Yeah,
okay.
So I would have had 6 points plus the year I put in. So
gotcha.
7 years. So
yep.
First of all, we should talk a little bit about draw tags.
Sure.
If you're in a state that has an option to put in for a bonus tag, or it's not really, some cases they're bonus tags, depends on which draw you put in for and that, but
yep. Or they replace your general over-the-counter season tag.
Yeah,
yep.
But for this conversation, we're talking about special draw tags. So if you draw it, that's your only opportunity for that.
Correct.
For that year.
Yeah.
So
it's not an additional tag.
And I grew up in Wisconsin, so there really was no draw tags. I never encountered a draw. There just wasn't any.
Not for deer, anyway.
No. I mean, there's an elk population there now in the state, and I think they actually have harvested a couple of elk.
And the black bear tags are draw.
Yep, absolutely. So that really the bear tag was the only thing that I ever experienced that was you had to wait for. So, but here in the West, there's a lot more opportunities for big game units that are, well managed. And
Right.
what are your thoughts? Because you got some points to burn here pretty soon.
Yeah, getting there.
So what's your opinion on it? I mean, you've been with me now on a couple of hunts that I've drawn,
Mm-hmm.
and the elk hunt that we went on together. You
Yep.
saw that, see how that played out, successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even if we won a shot one, I would have considered it a successful
Yeah.
hunt. I mean, we learned a lot, saw some new country, saw some really good bulls. So,
Yeah, we're kind of doing the same thing on this trip.
yeah.
Brand new country, never been in it before.
So what do you think as a person with, 6 or 7 points now and on the cusp of being able to draw certain tags?
Yeah.
You're not going to draw, one of the 3 trophy state or trophy units with
Sure.
that, but
I mean, at least where we're at, we can get over-the-counter archery tag and hunt mule deer every year if we wanted to, in a good portion of the state. So it's a little bit different for us here because we have that opportunity every year over the counter, whereas like residents of Nevada or other states, you aren't guaranteed a tag every year.
Mm-hmm.
So then you run the scenario in your mind of, well, do I want to hunt more often, or do I want to just go out of state and get my hunting in on a year-to-year basis and amass those points for a really good unit at home?
Mm-hmm.
And in a state like that versus Oregon, where you can hunt mule deer or elk with archery equipment every year. But I'm still in the camp of I'd rather draw, a good to great unit twice as often than try and hold out for the top 2 or 3 tags for that species and weapon of choice.
Yeah.
Part of it, and like we're experiencing here in this late mule deer season hunt, weather is a huge factor on what kind of population of animals, what your animal saturation is in the particular unit during that hunt. This unit that we're in is somewhat reliant on migratory patterns for, stock and shot opportunities and what have you. So you never know. I mean, you save up 20 points and draw this tag, and it's a terrible year for weather as far as getting the deer into the particular unit you're hunting based on when the weather patterns occur that move them there or move them out. If you're hunting someplace where winter weather will push them out of the unit. So to me, waiting so long to draw tag and then having other circumstances like that, I guess it depends on which unit. Some aren't as affected by weather as others, but here, at least in the eastern part of the state, and we've seen this the last 5 years or so, wildfires are a big deal too. You never know when you're saving up 25 points to draw a tag, and all of a sudden a wildfire comes in and just absolutely demolishes the unit that you've been waiting, a third of your lifetime to draw. And now what do? Now you got to burn all those points or something.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I'd rather take all that extra thought and stress and decision making out of it and just draw much more often.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that's a fun. The thing is, I think if you're thinking about putting in for some tags, if you live in the Midwest or the East, and even if you live in the West and you want to hunt out of state, there's a lot of to Nate's point, there's a lot of really good units out there. If you do your research and you start getting on the forums and talking to people, to find out that units that are lesser known can still and the trophies in the eye of whoever takes it.
Sure.
So obviously it depends on what you're looking for, but for the sake of argument, we're talking about trying to get trying to harvest a trophy animal by standards that are usually measured in inches. So take a look and talk to. The more you talk to people, because that elk 2 years ago I think I had 7 points. I drew a unit that was, again, through talking to some people and people that have hunted that have said, hey, this can, if you're looking to shoot a 300-inch bull, which to me is a trophy any day, every day, you let me know when that gets,
Yep,
that gets not to be considered a trophy. And I don't know.
Yeah, But
That's it.
then you've got your like top 2 or 3 units,
Yeah.
and then there's like 350 class in that unit.
Right.
So then, that kind of weighs in on your decision
Well,
making
it
too.
does. But the thing is it's not the fact that the unit that I drew didn't have 350 or 380 inch bulls in there. There's just more of them in the other units. So, but yeah,
and
I
a
mean,
lot of
and
times less tags going
right.
after them too.
And to put it in perspective, so it took me 7. It generally takes people 6 to 8 years to draw that particular unit, somewhere on there. The next step, there really is no middle ground. There's really isn't a 10 or a 12, and anyway in this state that I know of, everything that's worth it jumps up. To put that in perspective, if you wanted to hunt,
because
right,
Oregon's a bonus point system, so essentially all the tags go to the top points.
Right, it's not a
for
random.
the most point. Well, there is a slight split, but
right.
Essentially, if you're a resident and you're applying,
consider to get in line and wait the appropriate years that it counts up to.
Yeah, and if you're young and you started late or whatever, then you may never catch the curve.
Yeah,
potentially depends on other circumstances, but
And those units we're talking about here in the state, and it's going to be, similar to other states, that they manage the unit for trophy elk or deer. You're looking at 20 years. So if you think about it, if you're 25 and you start putting in, there's a good chance you're only going to get that and be able to use that one time in your life.
Yep.
So, and I didn't know about point creep, and I just, if it's 16 or 17 years, that's what it is. But to Nate's point, that bubble gets pushed. So as hunting becomes more popular, and it generally does every year, archery, when you look at sales, and it doesn't necessarily show you that there's a big jump, but it does grow a little bit. So if there's more, and it seems like archery is growing faster than rifle hunting. People are taking that up quicker. But, as more people put in for those certain unit tags every year, if there's more people applying, that just means it takes more years to draw till it comes to your name. So
right.
What maybe 5 years ago, a unit you could draw with 15 points, fast forward to now, and it's maybe, 18 years because that many more people are hearing about it and want to put in for it. So anyway, that brings us to late season mule deer hunting. I was pretty stoked about this when I got this. We know John, Crave member John. He's drawn this twice, I think. Yeah, twice.
Yep.
And shot a nice buck a few years. Like that was the first time he came. He shot that buck.
Correct.
Yeah. So that was quite a few years ago. He was much thinner.
Right.
Anyway, so he's drawn this tag. His father-in-law's drawn this tag. Our other friend Matt, he's drawn this tag. So I mean, there's been some success in our little circle of friends that have drawn this tag, and I think every one of those guys, except for maybe Todd, has harvested bucks over here. And so I was pretty geeked out. To Nate's point, it's very weather dependent. So we are hunting, mule deer that are migrating hundreds of miles to be here. So, and really what dictates that is the snow level. So as, a lot of these mountain bucks and high elevation summer bucks, as winter, fall rolls in and snowfall accumulates, after a while, even though they're tall animals, the snow level gets to be a point where they can't eat. There's nothing to eat. They can't move around.
Yeah, covers all the vegetation, right?
Yeah, so that pushes them down into these flats, which can be hundreds of miles away, but where there's food and shelter and, well, very little shelter here, but
yeah, food at any rate. That's the primary objective.
So it makes a big difference if these mountain ranges don't see snow in significant levels in September, October. Then those deer, they just don't. They're not
right,
here.
They
yet.
haven't moved down yet.
Right. Yeah. So.
And then you're just hunting the local deer that live there year round.
Right.
Which may or may not be large numbers.
I think we got a little bit of a mix.
Yeah.
Some of the out of towners are moving in.
Yeah. Our opinion changed. Quite a bit from yesterday to today.
Yeah, we've seen some deer now. We saw deer yesterday too, but So we packed a little bit different. We are currently sitting by a fireplace right now. We have lights on timers. We have
Cold beverages.
cold
at the ready.
beverages. Yeah, I mean, this is. Now, we should probably clarify a few things. We're sitting inside a 1957 Scotsman pull-behind trailer,
Yep.
travel trailer. Cozy, definitely cozy.
Yeah. We can probably both stretch our tippy toes and our fingertips from one end to the other.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a 10 footer.
Yeah.
Maybe 10. Yeah, that's about right. But
The nice thing is it's small enough where the heater works pretty darn good.
yeah,
It doesn't take much to
Nate
get it
broke out
warmed up.
the sweet savvy dealer that he is, buyer that he is. He sniffed out a deal on a buddy heater, so we got that glowing at our feet. And yeah, when you're only trying to heat 9 square feet, it's pretty.
Doesn't take much.
Doesn't take much. Yeah.
But we didn't run it the first night. That's why you got.
Yeah. I underdressed big time the first night. So, and I was still cold last night a little bit. So, but yeah, so we packed a little bit different this trip than last podcast. We talked about our elk recap and what we packed and what worked and what didn't. That's kind of another reason I was looking forward to this trip, mainly because you hunt out of the rig, or at least you come back to the rig every night.
Yep.
So everything's kind of, I don't know. You take a break a little bit on the prep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a little better food than just freeze dried pouches.
Yeah.
Like considerably more amenities in this style.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We spent a good amount of time, on the hoof, glassing and whatnot too. But we weren't in the backcountry by any means on this trip.
No. So just to paint the picture of where we're hunting, we're hunting Eastern Oregon. Granted, that doesn't really pin you down exactly where we are, but it's high desert.
Yeah, sagebrush country.
Yeah, very, very open. I sent a pic. We get a little bit of cell service in some areas, and I sent a picture to my wife of us, and we were glassing on the hillside, and she responds, "I didn't know you were leaving. Where have you been all weekend?" No, she's like, how do you find any deer? She says, first, why would any deer want to live there? And how are you supposed to find them in that or something like that? So anyway, it's very open sagebrush. I mean, we've been eating well, which means, there's certain things that the body has to do after a while. And taking care of those situations in this type of terrain and topography. Not very easy. I mean,
right. This is like the one time ever in my life I've actually missed dealing with tons of blowdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Trees that have fallen over from the wind.
There's not a tree. There's not a tree of that would, measure above my waistband around here.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Sagebrush and cheatgrass. That's about it.
But so it's not completely flat. There's actually it's very broken, as John would say.
Right.
There's some small hills and, some bigger hills and just ups and downs that these deer can,
there's definitely plenty of places to hide, even though there's no tree
absolutely.
cover. Yep.
So, as far as the gear we're running, it like I said, completely different. Like if you're coming out to do something like this and, you really don't need to go out and buy, new boots and a new backpack and, all of these things for high mountain elk hunting or even these forest bucks. So quite honestly, you could wear tennis shoes probably or a light hiking boot.
Yeah, it's fairly easy walking.
Yeah, absolutely. So
even though you've got the elevation change, you're not climbing over blowdown every 5 steps.
No, it's and I've really appreciated that.
Yeah,
I do appreciate it every time we can cut 300 yards in a matter of a minute or two.
Well, and you can see 300 yards too.
Oh shit.
Yeah. We could see for 1,300 yards.
Yeah. We did
cool.
glass up some of those deer and zap them with the rangefinder at 1,400. So, but so just we're running. It's cold. I mean, it's really cold. It's been getting down in the single digits at night. So the morning, if we were setting out and we were sitting and glassing on a knob all day, you definitely want to pack a little bit heavier clothes, but there's so much country to cover. We've actually been driving the rig to this spot, getting out, climbing up on a hill, glassing, going to the next spot. So, we've kind of been in and out of the truck
Mm-hmm.
a few times. So, backpack, just standard. I mean, you got your Everly stock. I have my Kafaru that we've been running.
Mm-hmm.
But really, all we're carrying is, a little bit of water and spotting scope.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then extra layer of clothes
Yeah.
in case the wind picks up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's pretty run and gun.
Mhm.
It's pretty run and gun. The biggest thing, by far, if you're going to do any type of high country or open country, hunting of anything, your optics they make all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You got a pair of
I'm running Vortex,
Vortex, yeah.
12 by 50s. And they're, I don't actually carry them very often. They're a little bit heavy. I normally run 8 by 42s just because they're a lot lighter and more comfortable to carry around all day. But those would definitely not have cut it on this trip. Those Nikons, the 8 bys are pretty good for elk hunting when they're light, compact, small.
like me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one of those things.
Yeah. I've heard.
So, yeah, the 12 bys, though, Jake was running the spotting scope, and I was just running my binoculars for the most part. And those work plenty well for, I picked out animals at 1,000+ yards, and, then we had to refer to the spotting scope after that in order to count tines and whatnot, get a closer look at the bucks we were seeing.
You have spotted probably a baker's dozen brush bucks, too.
Well, you never know.
You pick those out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to stop and look just to be sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Brakes got to work out a few times. Huh?
Yep. Yeah. But no, those, and the thing is, like, spotting the deer here, if they're standing up anywhere, you can pick them out fairly easy.
Especially if they're moving,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, for sure.
The bucks, they're running as well, plus the migration, and they're just, the bucks we've seen have generally been on the move.
Yeah.
But
But
with the
that's
exception of the younger ones.
Mm-hmm. This is what you want the better glass for, though, is when, you get up on a knob and you're trying to, pick apart an area, something that you can't see from, like the road just doesn't give you a good angle at.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention, I mean, there's just so much to be said for getting your ass out of the vehicle and going for a walk. Even in, a situation like this where you can cover a lot of the ground and quite honestly, it's probably more efficient.
We've probably spotted as many deer from the truck as we have from glassing points.
Right. Yeah.
Does. I mean, mostly
Right.
does, but
yeah, I mean, tonight though, we would have saw those bucks, right place, right time,
yeah,
we would have
but
spotted.
if we weren't camped on a glassing point for
right.
extended period of time, we
Right.
wouldn't have seen them.
Right, exactly. And we luckily nothing did go by. I think those bucks would have spooked
Yeah,
big time.
I think so too.
But
There has been a lot of road traffic in this unit too.
yeah. So good glass. So Nate's running the Vortex 12 by 50s. I got a pair of Swarovskis 10 by 42s, and then we were lucky enough to get our hands on a Leupold spotting scope. I'm not sure exactly what specific model it is, but we did get our hands on that, and it's been really good for, to Nate's point, when you find a group of deer and you just can't quite tell, they're just far enough away, they're pushing 1,000+ yards. You can't quite tell what they are. You get the spotting scope out, verify what they are first, and if it's something you want to go after. But also with the spotting scope at that point, these deer are up and down all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They're on their feet all night because it's cold, and in the morning they're up and they're feeding. But a lot of these deer also, they'll bed down for half hour, and this is only an hour after first light. So,
Yep.
If you're looking at a group of 6 does and it's mid-November, logic tells you there should be a buck there. So you can get the spotting scope out, dial it in, and pick apart each, blade of grass and patch a.
Check for tines.
Yeah, and look for that bedded buck that's close by or just over the rise where you can just see his back or something. So I've really never hunted with a spotting scope before. For one thing, I mean, that's another thing. It's like, do you need to spend, $1,000 or more
Yeah.
on a good spotting scope?
If you're doing this type of hunting every year, I'd say yes.
Yeah,
'Cause
definitely. Yeah.
We would have seen a third of the deer we saw.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, and verification of
A
what we
third
were
of the
seeing.
bucks we saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Without a spotting scope, it wouldn't have. I mean, you could see a body of a deer, but
Mm-hmm.
couldn't necessarily tell if it was a buck or a doe.
Yeah. I would say, and I know it's different kind of depending on where you go. If you're going to New Mexico and Arizona and those type of places, you can get into areas where I'm talking about elk hunting now.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in most cases for elk hunting, you don't need, I would say you definitely don't, if a guy's saying, should I buy a spotting scope? I have an extra $1,000-$1,500. Should I buy a spotting scope before I go to Colorado or, wherever, somewhere in the West and, Arizona and go hunt elk? I'd say no, definitely not. But for this type of hunting where you're just in big country and you're always, you're looking for antler, tips, sticking above sage-grass or, flickers of ears, that sort of thing. And if you're going to be on animals a long time, so, you spot up something 2,000 yards away and you know that they're going to be there, but you want to really keep an eye on them all day. Yeah, definitely. I would definitely recommend it.
Yep.
So.
And a good tripod too.
Yeah, for sure. That's just, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Because I don't care how good spotting scope you got. If you don't have a tripod, any tripod.
Yeah, it's pretty well worthless if you don't.
Yeah, it's a boat anchor.
And if you've got a crappy tripod and you breathe on the thing and it shakes like crazy, that's
like
not
most
good
of
either.
our podcasts are filmed on, yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a good point. I'm really glad you brought that up. It's just something to think about. If you're going to spend the money on good optics, whether it's binoculars or a scope or a spotting scope, something like that, any of those things, the accessories that go along with it are as important, if not more important, than the actual piece itself. Because, without, like binoculars, there's a lot of good harnesses.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how nice they are. If you run that
Yep.
dental floss they ship them with around your neck, you're going to be...
Yeah. Especially
you're
when
going
you
to be
got
chucking them in the river.
when you got a rad sunburn like you do.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty awesome to be hunting in an area where you can still get a sunburn in mid-November.
Yeah, and it barely got over 10 degrees yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but just keep that in mind when you're looking at optics. To Nate's point, even the high end ones, whether it's Swarovski or Zeiss or
Loophole.
yeah, Loophole. I mean, Leica, whatever. There's a bunch of them. They all come with decent straps, but if you don't have that equally balanced across your chest,
Yep.
it sucks. So
Yeah.
and just think about this type of hunting on the ground a lot. Your belly crawling, that sort of thing. You really want to make sure you're not, skull dragging those, $2,000 or $900 binoculars across the rocks,
Yeah,
the
for
sand.
sure.
Yeah. So
When I was running my DSLR for most of it too, because I don't, I'm not carrying a tag. I'm just here in support. So I'm taking some pictures and stuff too. And I run a Peak Designs, basically hip holster for my DSLR. Screw a little plate in the base where you would normally mount a tripod to, and then it just slides in and out of a quick release clip system that goes on my belt. So having that too, as we're kind of crawling around, trying to stay low as much as possible and stay behind the sagebrush as we're creeping over ridges and stuff.
Yep.
That was nice too. So I didn't have to worry about my camera or anything else in the way.
the other thing I would suggest if you're going to be using your optics a lot, two things. I'm dead serious about this. I would bring an eye patch. So I would.
Yeah.
Because so many times you're looking through the spotting scope, obviously.
Like all those super serious indoor paper league shooters.
Yeah, you know who you are. But you're always closing your off eye, to keep the light out and to get a better look through the spotting scope. Yep. And after a while, eye fatigue is terrible. You just want to keep your eyes open, both eyes open.
Yeah.
I would seriously consider bringing an eye patch because you could throw that over your opposite eye. You keep both eyes open.
Yeah.
And then still focus on.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you're buried in a spotting scope for 10 minutes and then you try to bring up your binoculars and you're looking through both eyes, you can't see shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that, and then the other thing is, we're having ideal conditions as far as spotting scopes are concerned, or glassing. It's been a little too sunny, but it's been nice. We haven't been worried about precipitation.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is condensation in the early morning when
So
everything else is still cold, and then you're breathing your hot air into them.
Yeah.
While you're glassing.
So get yourself a good squeegee.
Yeah, and hang it on your bino harness.
Yeah.
So it's handy.
Yep. Yeah, you want to keep those lenses clean, and even if it's nice out, there's always dust out. You give those good cleaning every once in a while. So, but yeah, everything else has been pretty much the same. I mean, you want to be seasoned. I mean, you want to be as confident with your shot as possible. Obviously, that's kind of silly. You'd always want to be that, but getting close is probably not going to be the usual on the norm. So, get consistent and accurate and confident, past 50, 60 yards, if you can get out to that 70, 80 range. There's going to be a lot of, I think I can see already, even after 2 days, there's going to be situations where you're going to be pushed, where, there's rarely a situation where you're going to get a buck by himself. There's usually going to be other deer around, so you're going to have to, just get accurate. Get as confident.
And when there's a group of does, there's always at least one pair of eyes.
Yeah.
Checking everything out.
Yeah, this is a hunt I would definitely, I'd probably recommend a movable sight. We're running black gold right now, Ascent, I think they're called. Yeah, and it's a movable sight, but it's got a 3-pin housing already. So, I'm set up for 30, 40, 50 is my initial setup with my bar ran all the way clear to the top. And then, my bottom, my 50, at that point, it's a movable pin as well, or it's a movable housing. So
you move it based on your center pin. So wherever you set it to, you're good plus or minus 10.
Yeah, I don't play that game.
Just about.
Generally, when I start moving my sights, because usually here's the thing, if an animal is at 70 yards, usually it's probably stopped and looking where you're able to stop. You can turn your sight to where you need it because, so in my mind, once they get out at that, you're going to be able to dial into the exact yardage.
Sure.
Pretty close. So, but yeah,
I'm just thinking
if
they're they move a couple steps one direction or another.
Yeah, you can split pins or yeah.
So you would sight it in on the bottom pin.
I do the bottom pin, and some of it was when I started sighting in initially. I had my pins centered in my housing as best I could. And I did have to make some adjustments. And by the time I started stepping back, my pins were in a position where if I would use my top pin, I would have ran out of some adjustment. It just didn't quite work. So, and some people, it's just what they're used to. So generally your farthest shots are always your bottom pin, always. So, obviously as you're in a situation where you have to move your sight, that animal's farther away, so you probably naturally are just going to go to your bottom pin anyway. But in any event,
I was just curious what your thought was on that.
Yeah.
I think I would do it where the movable pin is based on the center. That way if the animal takes a couple steps either way, you still have a pin on either side for reference. Obviously, your center pin, when you're sighted in at 30 yards and then you've got a 20 and a 40, you go push that out there and now all of a sudden your center pin 60, that bottom pin is not going to quite be 70. So you're going to have to take that into consideration as well. But
the other thing too is if you're, a lot of these sights, as a bow gets slower, you need more adjustment, obviously. So, unless you're a 30-inch draw and you're shooting a grained out 70-pound arrow, 70-pound bow and an arrow that's grained out at 350 grains. A lot of sights, if you are into long distance shooting, are not going to have enough adjustment once you get down there, to the bottom, to that 90 or 100 range. If you feel comfortable shooting 100 yards at an elk. So if you use your top or middle pin, sometimes even with a full adjustment, you won't get maximum yardage. That maybe that 90-yard pin doesn't quite make it for you because your bow's not fast enough, or you're not shooting fast enough to make that with your sight.
Right.
So using the bottom pin will always give you your maximum yardage distance that you can achieve. So I've run into that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I've run into that in the past where I was shooting heavier arrows and just out of a slower bow, and I started, my pins were just a little bit too high, or they were getting a little bit higher in my housing, and I tried to sight in for the top pin, and just because it was easiest for me, or that was the one I always came back to naturally, was the top pin.
Mm-hmm.
So as I was moving and I was setting him for like 50, 60, 70, I was using that top pin. Well, I realized pretty soon I ran out of adjustment because my pin was too high. Where if you switch to the bottom, it's going to raise you up another, whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and if you're running for like a 3D tournament too with 90 or 100 yard shots or something like that, you definitely run into that issue.
Yeah. So, to me, I mean, when people are setting up their bows, some people like pins, vertical pins. Some people like horizontal pins, like coming from the side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me, I prefer the horizontal pins. But, when people like different colors, like I want all green, or I want green,
different
green,
sizes
red, green.
as well.
Yeah, so I'd say with movable sights, do whatever's comfortable. Because that's the biggest thing that people get messed up on is, either they forget to move their sight, or they move their sight and then they forget to move it back, or they pick the wrong pin.
Yeah.
And so that's where the beauty of one single pin movable is nice, because you're always, I think it keeps you a little more honest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it takes all that extra thinking and rethinking it out of the equation.
Mm-hmm. So that was our setup. Pretty basic stuff, a lot of running and gunning, a lot of moving and spotting and that sort of thing. So being comfortable clothes, being quiet clothes, get good optics. I would, in this open country, I'd carry a pair of sunglasses, just because if it is sunny out, I mean, there's just no hiding from it. You're just getting beat down with the sun all day.
Yeah, you're not going to find any shade.
Yeah. So yesterday, Nate was kind of alluding to, how our opinions can change through day to day. And when you're hunting, I think that's one of the toughest things to keep going, is that's, your mental state.
Yeah.
Right? It's, I'd hope nobody goes out for one day and is like, I'm done. I'm quit. I'm not coming back.
Yeah. I thought you were going that route yesterday.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed, and that's the other thing is expectations, right? You wait 7 years.
We've known a lot of people that have had this particular hunt and have had good luck. And so, we had high hopes from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we saw, I'm going to throw this number out, and some people are going to be like, what? You're disappointed with that? So we saw almost 40 deer yesterday, right? So that's a good, we both said, like, this is more deer than we generally ever see in a season. So,
yeah. And we saw some of those deer more than once in slightly different areas.
Right, but we still had a total count of about 35, 36 different deer.
Yeah.
We were pretty positive, so. Yeah. Saw some coyotes, big dogs, big old dogs.
Yeah, they're healthy around here.
Yeah. Yeah.
One's belly was dragging. I mean, he looked like a potbelly pig almost.
I don't think.
It was it was definitely his belly.
Yeah. But we saw a good amount of deer. We saw deer 5 minutes after we left camp, pretty much, up around the corner. But out of those 35 deer, we saw 2 bucks or one?
Just 2 on day one.
Yeah. And small deer, small bucks, like small forked horn. And the other one I didn't get a good look at. I just knew it wasn't that big. So, coming into an area where, granted, again, it's weather dependent, kind of depends on what's going on outside the area. But I've heard even on kind of down years, you should still be able to run into some local bucks that are decent. So we covered a lot of miles yesterday. Because we were new to the area, and the terrain was actually, promoting it. We did hunt out of the truck quite a bit. We would come to an area and scope it up and look through the binos, and we're covering miles and miles and miles and miles.
We're trying to get the lay of the land to some degree too. Yeah.
Not only were we covering miles in the truck, but we were covering triple that just with the glass.
Yeah.
So, to turn up 35 deer, quite honestly, in the radius that we covered was not a lot. You could see.
Yeah, we probably glassed a good portion of 10 square miles.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of country.
Yeah, we did. We did. So So it was a little disappointing. Yeah, we really didn't get too excited here or there. We climbed up and we glassed a few different vantage points that we could again cover a lot of area. And we've heard in the past that there's good deer population generally in these spots. So with the exception of those deer and a couple of other dudes, spotting from other points, that was pretty much it. This morning, even as we got up after like 10 hours of sleep, which was glorious.
Was it 10?
I don't know. It felt like it.
It was a solid 8. It was a hell of a lot more than what we got on the first night.
Yeah. It was about 8 times that, yeah. So, but yeah, it even seemed like there were less rigs heading up the road. Like almost everybody was kind of dejected. And that was the other thing I was thinking today. The mental wrestling match that you go through when you're hunting, and you start to think about what other people are seeing and, like who are those guys glassing up there? And you try to figure out how many guys are actually hunting. Like, oh, that guy doesn't have a bow and that guy doesn't have a bow, but that guy does. So the other two are glassing for him. I wonder what they're seeing up there. And God, probably seeing more than me, yeah, you battle it, you just want, you want to be successful. It wasn't for a lack of trying, I mean, we were out all day and, we did pound some brush and we covered a lot of area and spent the last 2 hours looking over some spots that I thought were pretty damn good,
Yeah.
And turned out the day they were. So, but that was day one. It was rough. I had some choice words for John, who said, put in for this unit. There's a lot of deer. But that brought us to day 2 today. And I'd say for the most part of the day, we were kind of seeing the same thing. I mean, it was...
Yeah, the first half of the day wasn't much different than yesterday.
Bleak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, so we did glass up a buck this morning, and he was a little fork and horn. But I was already even telling Nate, all right, if I'm going to make a move, this is how I'm going to do it. Like...
And he was almost a mile away.
Yeah.
But you were still, after what we'd seen day 1, I'm probably going to make a move.
Yeah. I'm like, it's the 8-hour drive to get here. And it's like, doesn't look like there's any deer. The migration hasn't really happened.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put a pin in this thing and, get some Veni in the cooler.
Yeah.
And so whatever. We ended up, there were some other guys kind of moving in down a different ridge, and we just kind of assumed that they were going to pick up those deer or those deer were going to pick them up because they weren't that far away. So, I said, let's just get out of here.
And they were perfectly skylined.
They skylined the hell out of themselves. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they were going to sneak right up on them.
Yeah, like if you were kind of like down by the river and you were with your, fiance or your girlfriend and you wanted to ask her to marry him, I would use those guys because they could be holding the sign and everybody in the country would see them.
Exactly.
Will you marry me?
Yep.
Marry Beth.
They might as well have had a bullhorn up there saying, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, that's the thing is like there's deer. The thing, these deer can be anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times they're kind of tucked up tight with underneath a steep ridge.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, these guys were walking right up there.
Yeah.
Anything below them. I mean, they were very content on, like, I'm just going to glass everything from 900 to 2,500 yards.
Yeah.
Because anything closer than that's going to pick me off. So.
Yeah. And maybe they were fine with that. They would at least let them know where the deer were.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something to consider when you're out glassing in this open country. Anytime you come up over a little rise or what have you, creep right up to the edge and glass before you come all the way over.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get spotted. I mean, you we'll get to this in a minute, but you made a move on a buck and got into within eyesight, probably 500 yards away, a group of does that we had glassed earlier, and those does spotted you pretty much immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And moved.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate long distance sight of these deer in the open country too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're smart. They know it, and naturally your eye kind of goes to that skyline because you can just,
I mean, we picked off several deer doing.
Yep.
Just with the naked eye,
mm-hmm.
catching them on the skyline like that.
Yep. Yeah, there's huge contrast there.
Mm-hmm.
Anything against the skyline that's moving
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a good point.
Especially when you got blazing sun,
Mhm.
or not blazing. In this case, it's cold as shit.
Yeah.
Very little cloud cover anyway,
Yeah.
like direct sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes without saying too. I mean, when you get to an area, and you can do this before. That's the cool thing about Google Earth. I mean, that you can do sunrise, sunset, or like the sunscape as it moves through the sky. You can see all the shadows for a given area at any given date. So before you go to a new area, you can look at the topography. You're like, okay, this. Everything changes when you get there because everything looks a little bit different. But you could say, like this is where elk may would be probably north facing slope, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, in a situation where we're hunting mule deer, like you can pick out all those big drainages and those ridge lines and that sort of thing. But look at where the sun is at any given point in the day, because, if you like think that there's going to be deer in this basin and you're going to climb up, there's a horseshoe all the way around that basin, you got to look and say, okay, sun's coming up in the east. So if I'm on the opposite end, if I'm on the west side in the morning and I'm trying to glass down, I'm going to get picked off and it's going to be hard as hell to get optics on anything down there because you're going to be looking right into the sun.
Yep.
And same thing at night, in this situation, I would say the sun position can be as, if not more important than the wind.
Yeah. And in early season mule deer hunts too, that's going to affect your stalking capabilities as well, because a lot of times you're going to get deer bedding down, and when that direct sun comes back around, when it's hot outside, that's going to cause the deer to get up and move. So, you got to keep the sun in mind in that regard too.
Mm-hmm.
On this particular hunt, I don't know that the direct sun or shade really influenced the deer's behavior, just because it's been so cold where, in fact, at least for us, the opposite was true, where it was nice to actually go sit in the sun and glass for a little bit.
Yeah.
When it was up high.
Yeah. Got the core temp over 95.
Right. But, yeah, just reinforce that, yeah. Pay attention to the sun and what it's doing.
Yep.
And what it's going to do over the next hour or however long you plan to be in the same spot.
When you're making a stalk, too, if you can put yourself between the animal and the sun, especially in early morning and late evening situations, man, it's going to be so into your, because even if that deer hears something up there, I mean, just think about, you've looked towards the sun and you just can't do it. You're losing, it just washes out everything in front of it. So
for sure. Yeah.
But so this afternoon we kind of regrouped. We saw some other does later this morning that we picked up. Saw some new country. The thing is like every time this whole year I felt kind of like we've had a nose for the animal, because we found elk a lot, and this trip we're finding deer. And I feel like we're finding more deer than everybody else. I know that sounds a little braggadocious, but like there's pockets of deer. I think you can tell, like, okay, those deer haven't been seen because we're in a spot where there's no sign of anybody being here.
Yeah.
So
correct.
The lack of bucks was tough, and this morning now we've seen deer that we saw yesterday. So it's not necessarily, you're starting to recognize some does and fawns in a group, and you're like, okay, well, we saw those yesterday, and yeah, I don't know, you get that false sense of kind of thinking you've got, like you've looked everywhere,
Yeah.
There's just no deer here, or, there's not the deer I'm looking for. So this afternoon I don't know. I mean, we both decided we didn't really kind of want to go back where we were last night and this morning, because we had been there twice now, and even though we'd seen deer, it hadn't been the deer we were looking for, and we started to see people kind of creeping in. So we decided to kind of drive downriver farther, or at least see what that looked like. To Nate's point earlier, there had been a wildfire that had gone through here a couple years ago. So even though this is like super desolate and just a lot of sagebrush, it still caught on fire, and it still burnt a shitload of acres.
Yep.
So
That's a lot of food going.
yeah, I mean, it's just area that's kind of unhuntable right now. They're actually here. ODFW is it ODFW or no BLM?
BLM. Yeah.
Yeah, BLM is dragging it, disking it for some reason.
I believe they're planting seeds at the same time.
Yeah.
They had hoppers on the machines.
That happened.
Looked like they were feeding seeds while they were disking it.
So anyway, we head downriver and we're on this road and it's burnt on both sides of us. And we're like, just thinking that any minute now it's going to, that burn had to subside at some point and, we're going to run into, get down there towards the breaks. And we just went far enough and we're like,
miles and miles and
yeah,
miles. And
like, I don't want to go any further.
no reprieve.
There's no diesel in the nearest town. So, like, we got to conserve our gas a little bit and so we can make it home.
Wet clay road.
Yeah. So we ended up just turning around, heading back. And we had jumped some deer yesterday morning, Saturday, the first morning, kind of off this one spot. And anyway, so there was a guy parked there yesterday, but today there wasn't anybody there. So we're like, let's go. We'll go up there. We only had a couple hours of light left.
Mm-hmm.
So we headed up, and we could still see the bulldozers in the back, pulling those discs and working that land. They weren't that far away. But we were at least in some land now that was, we knew had deer.
Mm-hmm.
Had some sagebrush, had some good habitat, was really nice. It's topography, there was actually some pretty good peaks and some drainages and stuff and ridges. So we crawled up, split up, and, we were still within eyesight of each other because, we wanted to be able to communicate a little bit if somebody saw something. And, you went up. And
I spotted a buck pretty much right away when I got out to the end of the point that I was going on. And he was cruising for does for sure. I mean, he was on the move with his nose down and following a pretty decent game trail. So, and then I took my binos down and tried to get your attention and wave you over. And by the time I waved you over and saw me and were moving back that way, by the time I brought my binos back up, I couldn't see him anymore.
Yeah.
And he had dropped down into a little trench there, and he'd actually gone all the way over. I thought he was still in that trench, but he was moving fast enough. He dropped down in that trench, back up the other side, and then over the rise altogether. And so naturally you get back over there, and it takes us 5 minutes of glassing to find the buck again. So I'm sure you were like, why'd you call me over here? What the hell?
I was surprised when he popped up, like how far away he had gotten.
Yeah.
Because
he was moving.
The first direction you gave me, like, oh, okay, you're over here. And that wasn't that far. I mean, it was probably 500 yards maybe.
Yeah.
But then, when we did see him a minute later, he was 1,200 yards.
Yeah. I was going to say 1,000 plus.
Yeah. So, but to your point, he wasn't, when we finally glassed him up, he was moving. He was still walking, but the amount of ground they can cover compared to you and I is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. So the weird thing is we had glassed up pack of 9 does and fawns that we had seen the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And, but found them, and like this buck was like clueless to where they were. So
yeah, he was probably only 600-700 yards from that group of does and yearlings, and never even seemed to notice.
No,
he was just. I think a hot doe had walked that trail earlier today, and he just had his nose to the ground, and he was just beelining it to wherever she went.
Yeah. So that was good. That was a good start to the evening.
Mm-hmm.
We hey, cool. It's the biggest buck we had seen at that point, which he was 3x3, a little better, 110 maybe. So
yeah,
but still compared to like putting all things in perspective, we're like, okay, we've covered a lot of ground. We've seen 3 bucks. Nothing that's been over, a basket rack in, even by Coos deer standards, So, to see that buck was like, cool, it might be something we want to actually go after.
Mm-hmm.
But he was scooting.
And we're only here for 2.5 days this time out. So, time's limited before.
So, granted, I want to shoot a good buck, but you got to take what's available sometimes.
Yeah.
But we glassed that up for another couple of minutes, and then not far, maybe 150 yards or so from where we had seen that buck last, another buck had popped up over the ridge. So again, like he's totally skylined.
Mm-hmm.
And I throw the binos on him, and I'm like, oh, Nate, there's that buck. There he is again. And then it only took me a couple seconds.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not the same buck.
Yeah, it's much better.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think you turn. He's like, he's a corker.
Yeah.
And
Yes, I did say that.
so we got on that buck, and he crested the ridge and was coming towards us, and he had moved down that face of that ridge, and I zapped him at 1,200, I think, pushing 1,300 yards, but he was closing some distance and coming down a face, and then we freaking lost him again. Like again, we took the binos down for a second, readjusted, and then he was gone.
Yeah, got the tripod set up
Yeah,
and the spotting scope.
Yes, I was getting.
Even though we were pretty sure we didn't need it on that buck,
Yeah.
he looked plenty big even with binos.
So yeah, we got that set up, threw the binos back up, and he's gone. Like, what the heck? Where'd he go?
Yeah.
So we watched, didn't see him, and he's only at this point 50 yards off the road, like off of a fairly well-used
A road we had driven down.
Yeah. Like our rig wasn't parked, our truck wasn't parked very far away.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a camp on this road also. So there's other hunters in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty close by.
But this buck, if you're thinking you're looking in one direction, you're looking straight ahead of you, and you have a big ridge that's running horizontal across from left to right. This buck came across the top and came down the other side. Well, when he got to the bottom, we lost him because we were so far away, and there was.
Mm-hmm. But we knew there was a dry creek bred in there.
Yeah.
Because we'd seen other deer in there, and so we figured that's where he went, and he
Yeah.
hung up, and he was probably, there could have been other deer in there as well. Just from our vantage point, we couldn't see in there.
Yeah.
But having traveled through that area before, we knew the topography of what was there. And
Right, and that there were deer in there.
Yeah.
Like two of the mornings, there were deer there. So.
Yep.
Does.
Right.
And that's right where he was heading. So we're like, okay, he's hung up down there with. We're in an area where if he craps out anyway, we're at some direction we're going to see him, even if it's 2,000 yards away. So anyway, I'm like, hey, I knew we didn't have a whole lot of light left, probably an hour and a half. So I left everything there with Nate, and I just said, I'm going after him. So I just cut off down the mountain, and there was a pretty good kind of basin between him and I. So basically, once I went out of eyesight, I could just go because he there's no way he could have seen me. The only thing that I kind of was hesitant about is if that buck just went down to the bottom where we couldn't see him and was still coming towards us, and he's cutting ground towards me and I'm cutting ground towards him, and
yeah, so I'm frantically panning back and forth from left to right on the last little rise before dropping down into that. Yeah, trying to make sure he's not popping over the top while you're beelining it.
Yeah.
That's one other thing maybe we can touch on is here in Oregon there's no regulations against using cell phones or radios to communicate. And so that was part of the reason why I hung back and glassed, is that we did have just enough cell service to be able to shoot messages back and forth. And so I was on the lookout, and if that did happen, then I could hopefully try and get a note to Jake as needed before disaster struck. But
yeah. So without going into all the fun details, it's always tough to tell a story if somebody's not actually looking at, the terrain.
Yeah.
But I cut distance and ended up getting close to this buck. The first time I got my eyes on him after I'd left our spotting nest was he had kind of worked back up the same ridge he just had crested and come down. He just had moved over and kind of was going back up the other side. And, that was maybe 400 yards away. So I cut, I'd probably cut a solid 800-900 yards at this point. And, anyway, he was kind of just moseying back up there, and he was a good buck, really good buck. So once he got back on top, I just booked it. I got out, I ran, and realized I was wearing too many clothes and I was sweating profusely. But, I started climbing the other side. Well, some does had popped over. Again, they were skylines, so I saw him immediately. And he just went over the top. And that's the cool thing about this hunting is you can put land, mass between you and your target, and you can just go because they can't see you,
Yeah, if you can use the topography to your advantage for sure.
Yeah, so I had booked up the other side, got up there, and and then that's that's always where, oh man, it's the anticipation is really awesome because, you know, he crested this hill and he's up on the other side, and I crested the hill and I'm up on the other side now. Well, now the land is broken and it drops down the other side, and you don't know which finger he's on, if he's coming towards you or if he's moving away from you, or, you know, what elevation he's at. Is he above you? Is he below you? So, yeah, I just moved across to a couple finger ridges, and each one I'd stop and just, to Nate's point, you know, slowly creep my, you know, noggin over and look down the other side, and wasn't there. And then in the third one, he was there. Well, he had hooked up with this other little buck that we had seen that I didn't know. So I'm looking for one deer, and there was 2 deer there. And that little buck, I think, just caught me moving a little bit at about, they're probably 160, 70 yards, and gorgeous buck. I mean, he ended up giving me some poses, some Mr. Novembers from the top of the other ridge, and I zapped him at 240. Was as close as the closest I got was probably about 170 or 80, but where he had, you know, given
stopped
me
enough where you could get a real good look at him.
Good zap on him. Yeah, and, I mean, it was a gorgeous buck. Good big 4x4, big frame. I would say he was a 170 class buck. So, but he's around. I mean, he's a couple ridges over. So
yeah, we know where he was when it got dark.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we got to bag it for this trip over and come back later and give it another go. But hopefully, he's still in the same general vicinity.
Yeah, and that's the cool part about hunting the rut. You know, whether it's whitetails or, you know, mule deer or blacktail or elk, whatever the case may be, is the possibility of new elk or new deer, you know, is every day, because these bulls and these big bucks are moving and they're looking for
love.
Yeah, looking for love, you know. So they're looking for does, and may you never see that buck again, but, you know, I may see 2 other ones that are similar. That
I'm glad we saw him today.
Heck yeah, that was way cool. So
yeah,
yeah,
fun hunt.
Very fun.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
All right. So
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, glad to be.
It's been a long time.
Want to do a quick recap now that we have Johann von Eastburn with us.
Da.
Yeah.
Da. Guten Tag.
This is the best beer. Yeah. So we wanted to recap the end of the archery deer season, or at least mule deer season. So last time we left you, Nate and I were holed up in a 1957 Scotsman camp trailer with minimal heat and plenty of beer, though, keep us warm. So
I was comfortable.
Was that a single twin in that one? That bed?
bunks.
Bunks?
Bunks, yeah.
Who was on top, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, the bunks were very tight. You know, I mean, they were,
Like-
yeah. You had to slide in, you know. You couldn't sit up.
Gotcha. Proverbial bunks. Okay. I'm just curious.
But we recap. We went over there the first weekend. Nate and I did, and had some good encounters. And then I went back. Nate, you stayed here, did a little hunting locally.
Yep.
And then John, your lovely wife, and
Yes.
sister-in-law had tags.
Yes.
as well.
They did.
You went ahead and toted your 6-month-old child over to the barren wasteland.
I did.
And you guys had a great time.
We did. Yes, we did. That was her first hunt. My daughter's first hunt. First ride along.
I was disappointed in how many deer she spotted, but whatever. It's fine.
You know, it was.
She's got a lot to learn.
She does.
You know, there's.
She was loud.
You know, yeah.
Her scent control was terrible as well.
You try to train them to, like, hey, you need to be looking at all times, but she could only seem to focus on one thing inside the cab of the pickup.
2 things.
Well, 2 things. Yes. Yes. Yeah. No, it was a great time. We spent Thanksgiving in a camper. Hashtag welfare Thanksgiving. It was great.
If that's welfare Thanksgiving, I'll sign up for that every
Oh, it was
year.
great. TV dinners for Thanksgiving dinner.
Hungry man's all around.
Yep. No, it was a really good time. We had a great time. It was not the easiest of hunts, as you guys could probably attest to. You worked hard for the deer you saw, and didn't. You saw a decent amount of deer every day, but the number of bucks weren't that high. But it was a good hunt. It was a good time. Good time as a family to be out there and just getting out and enjoying the great outdoors. So yeah, it was good.
Mm-hmm.
It was good.
It was fun.
Yeah,
it's fun to see you guys over there and have the camaraderie. It's one thing I miss a little bit from hunting back in the Midwest was, especially late season, November, when the rifle season kicked in, the gun season, it was always a big thing. It was, everybody got together and it was, you hunted with your clan, and whether it was 2 or 3 people or 25 people, it was like a big deal, I mean, you get together and you'd have usually a big dinner and party like before season started and, like, they made songs about it, second week of deer camp and, the 30 point buck and like you turn them on, it's a big deal. So like to be there with other people, granted it was archery hunting and it was mule deer, but it was kind of cool to have other people around for sure. So
many of our hunts are like backcountry.
Yeah, it's
walk in and
complete
pitch
solitude.
Yeah.
I mean,
you might have 2 or 3 other guys around you, but that's about it.
Right. You share it with
for
those
days on end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the social aspect.
Come back and just chill at night and
it's a freaking job. It's really tough. So this was a little more laid back and, the hunting was easier as far as the terrain and, like seeing animals, like you weren't toting around 35 pounds just day to day, and you could do a lot of it from the rig and get out and glass. And so it's really cool.
Yeah. I think it was interesting dynamic, there's obviously, things that my wife can provide our 6-month-old daughter, that I cannot, I tried, but, alas, she'd get pretty frustrated after, a few minutes, but, it was cool.
As would you, I imagine.
Just, trying to keep, our daughter entertained for as long as I could while, my wife would be out chasing some critters. It was a lot of fun. Came close. Man, we came close.
Yeah, so like just put it in perspective. Like, so you guys driving around in a rig and, you're getting out, doing some glassing.
Yep.
With your 6-month-old.
Yeah.
And you see a buck you want to make a play at, like you hand off the baby to a relative inside the cab.
Yeah.
And your wife, she takes off and goes and chases the buck.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't kill anything, but
She didn't.
Nobody did.
No.
No, it was...
Spoiler alert.
It was, it's tough. You guys will see pictures of the kind of terrain, but there's not a whole lot of cover down there. We were dealing with some...
There's no cover.
There's
no cover.
Yeah.
Sage up to your belly button at best.
We were dealing with some some factors of Mother Nature. There was a fire down there a couple years ago, and so it burned a vast majority of the plains. A lot of the sagebrush and cover where it was like a moonscape, and it was just greening up and some of that stuff, and those deer will bed down in that, and you can't get within 100 yards of those deer. So
yeah, it's like, I mean, if a buck like popped a squat on like the White House front lawn, good luck getting in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe right now you could, but
yeah.
Instead
of snipers on the roof, he just had a dozen does bedded all around him. They were on the lookout.
So
every buck we saw had his own personal security system.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there was some does that were cruising though. The one thing that I thought was interesting was, I mean, to your point, there was a lot of bucks that had does with them, but like, as many, if not more though, like those bucks, we'd see a few bucks that would cruise. They'd check out a group of does and like, they obviously weren't hot. So like, they just keep moving on. Like, well, you're dead to me. I'm going to go, I'm moving on. So
those deer that are roaming, those are like those singles, those bucks that don't bed down that you watch for a couple hours. They just keep going and going. I mean, tough to make a move on those deer.
It is.
Because, I mean, they'll cover, miles from the time you see them to this time where you give up on them. But
Well, and the good, the positive, or like, the thing that makes it fun is that when you see 2-3 bucks in a day that are moving that fast, in the course of an evening. I mean, it gets dark by 5:00, 4:30. So from 4:30 to 6 the next morning. I mean, just think about how many deer can move back into that area. That you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Because they're cruising. They're looking for does. So.
yeah, I don't know about you guys, but it seemed like we were seeing different bucks each day. We were hunting generally the same area, but the next day you'd see, generally speaking.
Yeah, you'd see new deer.
Yeah, with the
New
exception
bucks.
of maybe one big one that you were after or something, but new deer would move into the territory, which was cool.
So yeah, update on that. So last time we spoke, the first weekend, Nate and I did see a pretty good buck. It was a really good buck, and unfortunately we had to leave that day, but did find that buck 4 days later when we came back, and he was, he was probably a mile from where I had seen him last, and he had hooked up with a couple does, and I'd spent a good majority of the day on him, and ended up getting close, and I'm not afraid to say it. I missed. I know. It's rare. A rare miss. A rare miss by Siegel. But I saw him at 750 yards. And it's crazy how these deer just pick you out. Like from 700 yards away. Just think about how far. Like you can't see these deer. You can. I mean, maybe if they were silhouetted or skyline, you'd see these deer. But like generally from 700 yards, you're not going to pick out a deer. In
Right.
sage.
Not with the naked eye. For
No.
sure. Yeah.
But these deer, I'm telling you, man, they were on me, and not to the point where they were boogering out,
at that
but
distance, they're not.
they still
They're
knew,
aware of you, but they're not
it's
leaving the
still
county.
it's
Yeah.
discouraging. You're like, how am I going to cover 670 yards
Yep.
to get and make a play. So anyway,
with very little to no cover.
yeah. But I mean, to make a long story semi short, ended up getting on those deer. The cool thing is as open as it is over there, in a lot of western parts of the country, it's very open, but you can use the terrain to your advantage. So, as soon as they went out of sight, I mean, I covered 500 yards, pretty quick, and ended up spending the next few hours, crawling around on my hands and knees, and getting on the deer, losing them, getting back on them, bedding them down. Ended up bedding them down and got to a position where, I kind of flanked the deer and thought I had a little bit further to go, and they ended up popping up and kind of in front of me at, I think, at about 85 yards, and I just missed, man. I didn't. I arranged the doe, and I think the buck was a little bit closer than he was, or than she was, and so when I shot, I shot over his back, but he's a good buck, and ended up getting on him the next day again. But there was somebody else that had stumbled upon him and kind of unfortunately kind of pushed him. According to the guy, I ran into the guy too, later that day. But he had said that he had tracked him for 5 miles and couldn't find him again. So, but yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was new. It was a new experience. I'd suggest anybody that if you have a chance to do a western mule deer hunt, and I think you could go. You don't have to go to, Montana or far west. I mean, you can get into good mule deer country, not far out of the Midwest. And
Nebraska,
Dakotas,
yeah.
So, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about kind of freestyle stalking, on these deer, and you get kind of a false sense of security sometimes because they are so far away.
Yeah,
when you see them the first
spot
time,
them at 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll just boogie right over there.
Yeah.
And cut the distance
Yeah.
to a couple hundred, no problem. And
Yeah.
then, like you said, it doesn't take very long before you realize they're seeing you at 1,000 yards too.
Exactly. It's scary, man. It's scary.
Yep.
But I tell you what's really cool is like to be able to watch a deer bed down and then like to sneak in, like literally on your hands and knees, or sometimes on your belly, because you just don't have the cover, and like to get within, inside 100 yards, and have those deer not know that you're there. It's pretty cool. Like drawing the thing is, like, the rifle is just so much different, because you just don't have this situation where you have to get on your knees, draw a bow, and like become 4.5 feet tall all of a sudden.
Right.
Like with a rifle, you can shoot.
You can stay
from,
prone.
You can shoot from 1.5 feet. And that's tough. It's really tough. It's really, really hard. So I learned a lot. It was really good. John's done it before, so he was definitely had a lot of good advice, and Todd and the crew was definitely helpful. So
Would you do it again? Probably not in that unit, I'm guessing.
I would never go back there again.
Yeah.
Ever. I wouldn't even fly over that unit. It disgusts me. It disgusts me. It's gross. No, I totally would.
Yeah.
It was and we ran into people and we talked to people. Everybody said it was a pretty bad year as far as deer numbers, and whether that was just the time of the year and the migration at the time, or winter kill, or what, mule deer they got it rough. And I don't know. But
Yeah, we had a pretty rough winter last year, so the mule deer were feeling the hurt all over the state.
Yeah, I think we should look at maybe some out of state stuff, because in Oregon, as far as I'm pretty sure there's 3 late season archery hunts that you can hunt mule deer in the rut. There's only 3 hunts for 3 like different small specified areas in the state. So it's not very many. You compare that to other states, and you can hunt mule deer over the counter during the rut, every year. Because it is fun. It is fun. It's different than it's different than hunting them in the velvet. So I think we go. I think we look elsewhere.
Yeah. It's a bug, like anything else. Like whitetail or elk.
Yeah, because like those Oregon hunts, they take. You had 6 or 7 points. You can't wait that long to draw that tag again.
Yeah.
You got,
especially when it's so weather dependent and other factors where
we got to broaden our horizons.
In a burn like that. We talked about that on a previous podcast, where like when you're stacking up that many points waiting for a premium hunt, there's so many factors that can come to play when you finally do draw.
Here's what I'll say though: if you guys like the podcast, rate us, review us. 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever star you want. It doesn't matter, but it really helps.
The more, the better.
It does. It really helps us, because we want to keep this going, and the reviews, the iTunes reviews is where it's at. It really helps us for any podcast, for that matter. It really makes all the difference in the world. Take 30 seconds.
Absolutely.
Make a review. Tell us what you think. Give us an inside joke.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll call you out on one of the episodes.
Or if you see a chink in a chink in our armor as far as mule deer hunting goes, please let us know. We're always willing to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Jake and I aren't elitists. Nate might be, but Jake and I are always
definitely
trying to up our game.
Totally. So
go to thecrave.net, follow us on Facebook, find us on Instagram.
All right. Thanks for listening.